Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thanks for joining us today for the 1004 show. We're here with Lucas Lindsey of Domi Station in Tallahassee, Florida. What's going on, Lucas?
That's right. Hey, everybody. Things are good. It's a little rainy here, but happy to be on the show. Thanks.
It is muggy in southeastern Virginia, so maybe the rain is a good thing for you. I like to start with questions around kind of the city that you live in because I think when people think about cities, they think of a lot of different things. Maybe it's the food culture, maybe it's the beer culture. In Tallahassee, it's probably something different. When someone says Tallahassee, what are some of the words or kind of places that they think of first?
Yeah, Tallahassee's this funny little town in North Florida, and people talk about how the further north you go in Florida, the further south you go, right? So, like, we're kind of in the Panhandle, and in a way, it feels a little bit more like South Georgia than it does Florida. It's big, it's live oak trees and shrimp and grits more than it's palm trees and the beach. So we kind of have a clash of cultures. It's also a college town, small college town. So there's the influence of the universities, there's the football culture, and then we've got state government. So you also have lawyers, lobbyists, and a lot of students and ties downtown, kind of mixing and mingling with all that, a couple months out of the year. So it's an interesting kind of smash up of different people and different cultures, all in one place. So I've been in Tallahassee for 5 years. I moved here with my wife for graduate school. We were in Phoenix. We came out of Arizona State, worked in Phoenix for a bit, and then both wanted to get graduate degrees and ended up at Florida State. It just made the most sense for us. We'd never been to Tallahassee. We'd never even seen it. We just loaded up, got on the I-10, and got off the exit and found ourselves here. So
That's that millennial way, they say.
yeah, yeah, go east, go
Go,
east.
go east. Uh, in my research, Domi means at home.
Yeah, Domi is a Latin word that means home. Yeah, and the theory being that we're providing a home base for entrepreneurs, that kind of front door to a startup community in a community that really hasn't had a real formal or infrastructure kind of for entrepreneurship. There's certainly been some companies that have grown here and built here and been successful here, but it's been sort of at random. It hasn't been a process or a system that's in place. So what we've tried to do is create the home base for that.
And Domi Station in kind of an elevator pitch is what to you?
I mean, it goes back to being a home. It's a place where entrepreneurs, creatives, and ambitious people gather. We have a lot of the typical stuff that other communities have, like co-working space, events, community building things. But we also run incubator cohorts twice a year. We plug into the Co-Starters Network and use the system, that came out of Chattanooga. And we're well networked with a lot of other programs because of that. And now we're on the Union platform with the 1776 guys in DC, and we're really starting to kind of connect outside of the community and bring a lot of resources here locally that weren't here before. I think that one of the biggest challenges of building a startup community in a small town is that the network is so localized, and you really got to break out of that. So like I consider it our job to create relationships that our members and the companies here can leverage, so we can be brokers of relationships, not just locally to, all the different business services and sponsors and mentors and things, but regionally, nationally, internationally. Like, we need to be out there creating relationships that break these local companies out of a local mindset, if that makes sense.
So how do you? So from your point of view, you go and create those relationships, and then the companies that are in your space, then you kind of connect those people with those folks, or how do they get access to your network then?
Yeah, so I mean, in a case like Union, once you're into that platform, it's not just local mentors from our program that they have access to. It's the mentors that choose to opt in from 1776 or the Annex in Virginia. Those places all have built their own networks as well. So the companies through us can get access to that, which is great.
How do you define incubator cohorts?
So it's early stage companies. It's an idea stage or like early prototype. A couple of them might have revenue, but it's people just working on their idea that want to understand if they should move forward. And so we take 10 to 12 companies per cohort, and they go through a 6-month process. The first 3 months is in a classroom with a facilitator and a curriculum, and they're doing the business model canvas thing, doing customer discovery. The second 3 months is all execution of a 90-day strategic plan that they create.
Do you give them capital?
So we right now we're not able to. We're not well funded enough to do that. We connect the people that are at the right stage to investors, though. So there's some local angel networks. There's some Florida-wide funding networks. And we're currently in the process of standing up a microloan program for kind of Main Street businesses that maybe have a growth attitude, but that come through our program too.
Very cool. What type of companies are you typically taking out of those 10 to 12?
Yeah, when we first got started here was like, oh, it's going to be a tech incubator. It's going to be all scalable, change the world through an app kind of companies. And I got to be honest, like what came out was a lot of creative, intelligent, ambitious people, but there was a lot more people doing like consumer product goods stuff, building food businesses, productizing things, prototyping hardware stuff. And there's some layer of software and apps. Probably about a quarter of the companies we work with are pure technology. The rest are, like I said, consumer product goods, food, and hardware.
I think it's interesting. 5 years ago, I started kind of a Techstars style accelerator, and a lot of those companies were tech focused, I guess. But what we were learning is that the companies that we weren't working with were fairly established businesses, or could be established businesses, and needed a little bit of tech to help them, like a Facebook page or a website, but could be
Right.
very successful. And it's interesting how everyone talks tech, 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 when
Right.
it's like, actually, there's a lot that goes on without those tech businesses, whether it's Main Street businesses or kind of a newer Main Street business, I guess. But it's just
Right.
interesting to see how Tallahassee and Norfolk kind of had similar thoughts where, oh, we are gonna create the next big thing,
Right.
when in fact we're actually not good at tech, but we're good at these other things that might use a little bit of tech. So not like tech focused,
Right.
but instead, what is the core? So
Yes.
we're a tourism backyard, right? As you guys maybe too. And so we got the world's largest pleasure beach, whatever that means. And so
Wow.
to me,
Sounds
it sounds beautiful. So I look at that as, okay, we're in an experience backyard where you have to have experiences. And so you're starting to see a lot of escape rooms and Top Golfs, and so these are bigger companies, but you're starting to see this experience based piece to it, and it's interesting that that's not what people said was going to happen in this area. Cybersecurity or logistics, and it's interesting to see that maybe it's not what people thought it was, and kind of seems like that's what you guys are seeing as well in some cases.
Yeah, totally. I think when you're in a small, medium-sized city, the first thing you're trying to do is change the culture. You're trying to introduce a new mindset, and you're not going to go from zero to Facebook in 2-3 years, right? I mean, you're trying to introduce even just the idea of entrepreneurship and technology. And I think what you're touching on is that what we're finding success the most is where we're creating like technology enabled businesses. They may not be technology businesses, but they're people with creative ideas and a captive audience that need to get better at what they do. Maybe it's just process oriented stuff. Maybe it's ways to automate some of the things that they're doing to increase their margins. Um, but we launched a program recently called Power Up, which is a year-long program. It's an experiment for us, but we take 5 companies for the year. They're all small businesses in town, like really well-known local brands. And to qualify, they had to have a minimum of 250,000 a year in revenue. And we've got a 70-year-old like high-end men's clothing retailer that's like an establishment in Tallahassee. The the football coach walks in there and buys all of his clothes, you know. And then that coffee shops. There's the aviation center, which trains pilots. A really cool new barber shop in Tallahassee, which has like exploded in growth. So that has been a really cool process for us to apply the mindset of business model canvas and like lean thinking and experimentation using technology tools like a smart small business tech stack, right? And trying to help them grow. So to qualify, they had to have revenue, they had to express interest in a growth mindset, and want to export what they're doing to other communities or franchise what they're doing, something that would create wealth and bring it into town. And I think that those kind of programs could mean a lot for small cities.
Yeah, I find that something like that is very powerful, and there isn't a lot doing that. And that 70-year-old business, I mean, he wants to grow. Likely, he still wants to be consistent. He's recognized that the internet is something that he can help make more money off of, but it's the unknowns really.
Well, and in that case, actually, two of the companies in that program is multi-generational. So what you're seeing is the next generation of that business, the son or the daughter, that they desperately want to take on the family business, but they're a digital native, they're a millennial, like they understand that business is different now, and there's different tools, and you have to communicate differently and compete differently, and so it's kind of like a passing of the mantle to the next generation, but breaking companies out of the generational processes that they've been established. That's tough. It's really hard. So it gets personal. The strategic planning sessions get emotional, but it's important. It's big stuff.
Yeah. When you guys started this, what were some of the big problems, big pain points that Tallahassee had that weren't just kind of like nationwide buzzwords like, okay, we want to create more businesses or something like that, but very specific kind of pain points to Tallahassee?
Well, so when we got started, there was zero established formal capital network. It was just you knew a guy and you could set up a dinner at the governor's club and talk to him, and he might refer you to some people. So we had to prove that you could create a sustainable pipeline of companies in order to stand up a network of angels. So I think that was a really big move for Tallahassee, and we're trying to diversify, like I said, the type of capital that's available. So not just high growth, I need 10x on my money investment, which is what a lot of communities complain about not having enough of. But to be honest with you, it's also hard for, like I said, a small business to just get, uh, you know, um, debt capital or just financing as well. So those are the types of things that we need to break out of. I think that the biggest pain point that we've had is just this very localized kind of traditional mindset. Like people are happy with just making a go of it locally, and increasingly they're less and less able to compete, and they're fighting over the same dollars over and over. And we just had to get people towards a mindset of like, yes, you can live in a small town and love a small town, but you can build a big business too. I think that's just hard uh,
Because they
culturally to
because
make
they
that.
want to they want to say stay super local, right? And so they want to build up Tallahassee, they want to build up Norfolk, they want to build up Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Right.
But to really be able to do that, you have to have an infusion of capital from other places, basically, and that capital can just be revenue that you're selling to other places. And so,
Right.
how have you kind of persuaded people to understand that notion that, hey, like, we can only recycle the dollars here so much. We need to be building things that can be attracting capital from other places, whether it's raising capital or actually making capital.
Yeah, so we've had to do a lot of just getting out. It's funny because we tell our companies to use these technology tools that take them all over the world, but like our mission is so localized that some of the tools we use are like the local newspaper or the business chamber, and these existing systems where there's built-in trust already. But we make sure to be a regular voice in the op-ed section, right? Or we recently sponsored a chamber trip to Nashville, so we were able to get in front of the entire chamber a lot and talk about our mission and talk about examples of some of these companies that are growing, uh, you know, nationwide businesses from Tallahassee. And that resonates with people. Those messages do resonate. You just have to get in front of them, I think, in a way that they're used to. You can't expect that everyone's going to come to your co-working space's happy hour, and you can't resent them for not doing that, right? You have to reach out. Uh, I think a lot of young people doing innovation work in small cities have a chip on their shoulder, and you certainly have to like make a go of it every day. But you also have to know that there is a time to be respectful and reach out across party lines, if you will.
What is it about Nashville or other? It seems like a lot of people are going to Nashville now to check out what they're doing in their startup community. But what is it about a community like Nashville, or maybe even the entire state of Tennessee, or places that have that notoriety that makes people want to go look at them and try and implement some of their strategies?
They're just so highly recognized, right? The people, they just want to be a part of that. I think that they've communicated their success so well, and it's been so widely celebrated uh, that that's contagious. It's like that fear of missing out uh, infiltrates even the business chamber. It's not just tech people that feel that. And one thing that took us to Nashville was that there is such a well-branded community. And one thing we've been talking about here is what is the brand of our community? How do we communicate that through Tourism Bureau and other things? So they had a pretty specific mission around tourism development and then the entrepreneurship scene, which we checked out. And I would say that the state of Tennessee has a great system for supporting kind of innovation infrastructure. They have Launch Tennessee, which is a state-funded organization that provides operational dollars to incubators across the state. They provide matching investment dollars that match private dollars. So they're doing some cool, innovative things that are at a state level supporting the work in rural communities in urban areas.
So I think that's, you said something that's really key there: communicating success. And I think a lot of people are like, maybe we are or we're not, or they don't believe it yet. And so I'll give you an example. Is recently Norfolk, Virginia, which is where I live, was named by Time Magazine as the top place for millennials to move.
Yeah,
And people are
awesome.
like, I don't know that I believe that. And I was like, it doesn't matter if you
Yeah,
believe it or not. You get behind it
yeah,
and you throw everything at it because it's something. It's not like a Zillow list. This is Time Magazine, and so that's a very well respected organization. And to be able to have someone like that say that you're ranked that high,
yeah,
that's a big thing. And so, what are some?
yeah.
So, is that the type of thing where you're saying, like with the tourism board, like when we get on these lists, we need to be selling not only like, hey, we have this college town, but we also have this, growing startup scene where we want to do it. Like, how does that conversation go so that you can communicate success or communicate what you guys have been working towards?
Yeah. I mean, first you got to sell it to a small group of committed people locally. There has to be a group of people that believe in it, that meet regularly, that talk about it, and that, in a way, make a pact to talk about how great things are. And it's not an idea that I came up with. We actually hosted in our space. We were able to have David Cohen from TechStars visited. He's a Florida State football fan, so that lured him to Tallahassee. So we leveraged that resource. But he talked about how 20 years ago in Boulder there was like 10 people in a room, and they made a pact that everywhere they traveled, they would tell everyone they met how great Boulder was. And this was before Boulder was great. And he said we all knew that we were kind of fibbing a little bit, but in the end, we started to drink our Kool-Aid. We believed it. Other people believed it. And that's like the informal kind of first layer, but then I think it grows from there and you start to formalize it. So you look at then like Chattanooga, they're like actively recruiting journalists and writers, reporters, people to come there and tell the story. Or Fargo, North Dakota, friends working up there. They face a huge perception deficit, right? Like every time you say Fargo, North Dakota, someone laughs.
But you know
So
their
they,
1 million cups has like 200 people
it's
attend
amazing.
every week.
It's amazing. They're doing amazing work there, and like Greg and his team up there. But they face this hurdle of reputation that they have to get over, and he talks a lot about that. But one thing they focused a lot on is, they know that people come for short amounts of time. So when people come through, they've created these like almost like local experience guides that will give you the best 24 hours of your life in Fargo. And Greg jokes that like, don't stay any longer than that, but I can give you the best 24 hours ever. But that kind of experience and like concierge experience and intentionality, I think is huge. And I guess that's like the do things that don't scale phase for communities, because certainly can't do that at tens of thousands of people coming in, but influencers and writers and people with an audience, people to get the word out. I think that does matter.
So I'm gonna give you an idea, and so with that same concept from Fargo of that concierge service now, and can it scale or not? So 4 or 5 years ago, the local university, Old Dominion University, got their football team back, and they went from one AA, so FBS to FCS, or I might be mixing that up, whatever. But they basically moved from the minors to the majors in college football. And while that was happening, they knew that they were going to get television time. And so I would talk to the school and say, you guys have a really good opportunity now to sell this area with when they have kind of the pre and post roll, like when you're going to a commercial. And I was
Yeah.
like, where and what are you going to show them? Because what we show them from the non-university setting is going to be very important, because
Yeah.
that's going to show the world, which does scale, and it does show that kind of
Mm.
that experience to people. It's like, if you're in DC, you're going to see the monuments. You're probably going to see the cherry blossoms. Here, you'd probably see Mount Trashmore, Virginia Beach. We got military ships everywhere. And so maybe you would show the startup community and some people working on stuff. It's a great example by taking kind of this really well-known brand. And in Florida
Yeah.
State, obviously you guys have a very well-known football team. I would start thinking, or if I was talking to someone about doing something like that, I would say, where can you start selling what you're doing at a national level by kind of leveraging someone else's brand that's already there?
Right. Yeah. I mean, exactly. I mean, how did we get David Cohen to come to town? I mean, it was Florida State, right? So, yeah, I mean, leverage that makes a lot of sense. And I guess it's just a matter of having the right contacts and touch points at the university that, get in a room to have that kind of strategic discussion, figuring out who those people are in those organizations probably matters a lot. We've talked to them. I go to the university a lot, and we discuss like how do they recruit faculty, and then how do they engage the spouses of faculty who are often kind of trailing spouses that are also highly educated. And one thing we talk about is that concierge experience of when they're bringing faculty to town, they're not just selling Florida State. They have to sell the whole experience of living in the place. And how can we improve that sale?
How do you sell that from a social media perspective?
We're in this place where we talk a lot about Tallahassee is a place you want to move if you're a builder, if you want to make things happen, if you want to be a part of creating the future. So come build the future with us, right? Uh, the tagline on our website is "We give the future a home," and we use that, and that's the phase that we're at. Is we're on the front end of a long-term investment in community development, and for people that are interested in being a part of that, which is by nature entrepreneurial people, people willing to take a risk, then you can come be a part of that here. And I think that matters a lot. That matters to young people that want to have an influence or an impact, faster than traditionally. And so that, yeah, exactly. So that's something that we try to put to use. But it's not for everyone, which is cool too. I mean, you have to understand that as long as you give people a good experience, sometimes they may boomerang back. Maybe they'll never come back, but they'll throw you a contact or a relationship when they've moved out west to Silicon Valley, which those things have happened for us. The other day I had someone walk in who was in one of our program 3 years ago, our first program. Kind of went silent. He was a student, and then 2 years later, or 3 years later, I walk in and he's standing in the lobby, talking to our community manager. And he was just back in town. He dropped out of school, moved to Austin, worked in startups, decided he wanted to start a company, and that Austin was pretty saturated and noisy and getting expensive, and he wanted to come back here to try and experiment. I thought we failed with him. Like, I thought we would never hear from him again. In fact, he'd taken off the email list and everything. But lo and behold, he wasn't ready yet. He needed other experiences, and he needed to choose to be back here. And for the time being, he's here.
So he came home, which is Domi.
Yeah, and somehow we had a good enough experience with him the first time that he knew he could come back, which is important.
Absolutely. Lucas, Lindsey, Domi Station. You can find them at domistation.com. If someone was interested in maybe joining a space like yours, whether it's in Tallahassee or somewhere across the country, why should they make Domi home or a co-working space or an incubator kind of their home? What's your kind of sales pitch to them?
I mean, it's not the space, it's the people. It's the network, it's the people that are in the space that they're ambitious, they're creative, they're doing cool things. There's a optimism and a positivity that's infectious. They say that you become the average of the people you hang out with most. So try to hang out with people smarter than you. And I think that, if they're done well and done right and programmed well, spaces like Domi Station can be that for a community. And that's why I would go to it, is for rapid connections and people that inspire me. So,
have you ever been to a place that says they do that, but you walk in, that it's not done? Like, it doesn't have that feel?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you can get that kind of off-kilter first impression. I think you have to spend the time in a place to really get to know it. It's like a restaurant. You should always give it 2 shots, probably. But yeah, I think sometimes you go in and there's a feeling of being disconnected. And I don't know what drives that, off.
But as someone that would be interested in joining, and not necessarily just your space, but they listen to this story, they go to your website, they see that they can sign up there, and they never experience a time there. So what you're saying is kind of test drive the car first to make sure that experience is something that they're going to win with.
Yeah, absolutely. And look around, look at the types of programming. Does it feel like it's inclusive? Does it feel like it reaches out across different boundaries, whether that's age, gender, race? Is it aligned with your goals? Like, part of what we talked about is, are you building a growth business or a Main Street business? Some people have different philosophies on that, and you need to understand if the programming and space that you're at aligns with that philosophy too.
Do you guys have an audacious goal? Like, to help something like so our goal is to help 10,000 businesses and have 1,000 work with 1,000 different kind of enterprises or spaces.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So our vision is to build the most diverse startup community in the Southeast. And there are some great cities taking a lead on that. I think of Durham, North Carolina, for example, traditionally Black Wall Street, American Underground, and the folks there are doing amazing work. But I think it's audacious in the American South in the Deep South, to have just a very public goal for inclusion and diversity. That makes a statement. In a town like Tallahassee, which is literally divided by railroad tracks, we have the historically Black college, Florida A&M on the south side, and Florida State on the north side, and the railroad tracks in between. We sit actually right on the railroad tracks, right in between the two, and so we work with both universities. We work with the Minority Chamber of Commerce and also the Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce. And increasingly, we've done some stuff with Thurgood Marshall College Fund to do programming for HBCUs. I'm excited by that stuff, and I think that if you can turn the stereotype of the South on its head, that's audacious. Like, to be an inclusive community in the last place you would expect it is pretty cool. But we have the amazing part is we have the demo. You know this because and being in Virginia, but we have the demographics. Like, even if we just build a city that mirrors, or build a startup community that mirrors our city, uh, then that's a pretty audacious goal.
How do you track that goal to become the most diverse?
So right now we track demographics information for people in our incubator program. We started doing that over the last year. We don't do it for co-working yet, but we do it for everyone that touches our structured incubator programs, like Power Up, and then our program Get Started.
Very cool. If someone was thinking about Domi Station or Tallahassee and they don't know a lot about it, what should they know about it?
There's a lot more happening here than you realized. I mean, there's cool stuff going on, and uh, there's people that are, as we speak, building the future of their city here, and I hope that is something that people understand.
Your tagline is what again?
We give the future a home.
I love that. We give the future a home. Talking with Lucas Lindsey of Domi Station. You guys can learn about them at domistation.com, DOMI station.com. Lucas, appreciate your time and
Thanks,
continued success building that future.
Yeah, you as well. Thank you so much.